Statistics. Before you go through this video, I recommend to watch video number 5 of this course, because in the video 5 we studied confidence interval with 95% interval. Once you understand the confidence interval, then proceed towards hypotheses. Hypotheses always refer to the population of people or events that you are studying. The first step is to understand that our hypotheses always refer to the population of people under study. For example, if we are interested in studying 18 to 24-year-old in St. Louis as our target market, and we select a sample of people in this age group in St. Louis. Depending on how we select our sample, we are hoping that our results of this study are useful in generalizing our findings to all 18 to 24-year-olds in St. Louis, and not just to the particular people in our sample. The entire group of 18 to 24-year-olds in St. Louis would be the population that we are interested in studying, while the particular group of people in our study are called the sample from this population. Since our sample sizes typically contain only a few people, we are interested in the results of our sample only insofar as the results of our sample can be generalized to the population in which we are really interested. That is why our hypotheses always refer to the population, and never to the sample of people in our study. You will recall from CHIAP 1 that we use the symbol X to refer to the mean of the sample we use in our research study. See sect 1. We will use the symbol mu, the Greek letter mu, to refer to the population mean. In testing our hypotheses, we are trying to decide which one of two competing hypotheses about the population mean we should accept given our data set. 2. The null hypothesis and the research alternative hypothesis. These two hypotheses are called the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis. Statistics textbooks typically refer to the null hypothesis with the notation H0. The research hypothesis is typically referred to with the notation H1, and it is sometimes called the alternative hypothesis. Let's explain first what is meant by the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis. 1. The null hypothesis is what we accept as true unless we have compelling evidence that it is not true. 2. The research hypothesis is what we accept as true whenever we reject the null hypothesis as true. This is similar to our legal system in America, where we assume that a supposed criminal is innocent until he or she is proven guilty in the eyes of a jury. Our null hypothesis is that this defendant is innocent, while the research hypothesis is that he or she is guilty. As the state slogan, "Show me." Quote, this means that people in Missouri think of themselves as not gullible enough to accept everything that someone says as true unless that person's actions indicate the truth of his or her claim. In other words, people in Missouri believe strongly that a person's actions speak much louder than that person's words. Since both the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis cannot both be true, the task of hypothesis testing using statistical formulas is to decide which one you will accept as true, and which one you will reject as true. Sometimes in marketing research, a series of rating scales is used to measure people's attitudes toward a company, toward one of its products, or toward their intention to buy that company's products. These rating scales are typically 5-point, 7-point, or 10-point scales, although other scale values are often used as well. One determining the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis when rating scales are used here is a typical example of a 7.
Here is a typical example of a 7-point scale in attitude research and customer satisfaction study. How would you rate your overall experience in purchasing your new car? On this scale, from 1 to 7, 1 poor and the 7 is excellent. Example of a rating scales item for a new car purchase. Practical example. So how do we decide what to use as the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis whenever rating scales are used? Objective: to decide on the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis whenever rating scales are used. In order to make this determination, we will use a simple rule. Rule for hypothesis decision. Rule: whenever rating scales are used, we will use the middle of the scales as the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis. Null hypothesis mu equal to 4, research hypothesis mu not equal to 4. In the above rating scale example, if the result of our statistical test for this one attitude scale item indicate that our population mean is close to 4, we say that we accept the null hypothesis, that our new car purchase experience was neither positive nor negative. In the above example, if the result of our statistical test indicate that the population mean is significantly different from 4, we reject the null hypothesis and accept the research hypothesis by stating either that the new car purchase experience was significantly positive. This is true whenever our simple mean is significantly greater than our expected population mean of 4. Or the new car purchase experience was significantly negative. This is accepted is true whenever our simple mean is significantly less than our expected population mean of 4. Both of these conclusions can't be true. We accept one of the hypotheses is true based on the data set in our research study, and the other one is not true based on our data set. The job of the marketing researchers then is to decide which of these two hypotheses, the null hypothesis or the research hypothesis, he or she will accept is true given the data set in the research study. Let's try some example of rating scale so that you can practice figuring out what the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis are for each rating scale. In the spaces in figure 3.7, write in the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis for the rating scale. These are the example of rating scale for determining the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis. From 1 to 5, strongly disagree, 2 disagree, undecided, 4 is agree, and 5 strongly disagree. How would you rate the quality of a teaching at Webster University? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Poor and excellent. Null hypothesis and research hypothesis. How would you rate the quality of the faculty of Webster University? From 1 to 10. Null hypothesis mu equal to and research hypothesis mu equal to. How did you do? Here are the answers to these 3 questions. Number 1, the null hypothesis is 3 and the research hypothesis is not equal to 3 on this 5-point scale. It is the middle of the scale is 3. Number 2, the null hypothesis is 4 and the research hypothesis is not equal to 4 on this 7-point scale. It is the middle of the scale is 4. Now the null hypothesis is 5.5 and the research hypothesis is not equal to 5.5 on this 10-point scale. It is the middle of the scale is 5.5. Since there are 5 numbers below 5.5 and 5 numbers above 5.5. Is another example. Holiday Inn Express in its Stay Smart Experience survey used 4-point scale. and it is 1 equal to not so good, 2 equal to average, 3 equal to very good, and 4 equal to great. And here are the 7 steps for hypothesis testing using the confidence interval about the mean. Objective: to learn the 7 steps of hypothesis testing using the confidence intervals about the mean. There are 7 basic steps of hypothesis testing for this statistical test. Study carefully this rule number 1 and this rule number 2, this rule number 3, rule number 3 is continue until here, and step 4, draw a picture of the confidence interval about the mean, including the mean, the lower limit of the interval, the upper limit of the interval, and the reference value given in the null hypothesis. Step 5, decide on a decision rule. Step 6, state the result of your statistic test. Read this carefully. Step 7, state the conclusion of your statistical test in the plain English. In practice, this is more difficult than it sounds because you are trying to summarize the result of your statistical test in simple English that is both concise and accurate, so that someone who has never had a statistics course, such as your boss perhaps, can understand the conclusion of your test. This is a difficult task, and we will give you lots of practice doing this. Last and the most important step.
Hi, welcome to the second part of hypothesis. Let's set some basic rules for stating the conclusion of a hypothesis test. Rule number 1. Whenever you reject H0 and accept H1, you must use the words significantly in the conclusion to alert the reader that this test found an important result. Rule number 2. Create an outline in words of the key terms you want to include in your conclusion so that you do not forget to include some of them. Rule number 3. Write the conclusion in plain English so that the reader can understand it even if that reader has never taken a statistics course. Let's practice these rules using the Chevy Impala Excel spreadsheet that you created earlier in this chapter. But first we need to state the hypotheses for that car. Since the billboard wants to claim that the Chevy Impala gets 28 miles per gallon, the hypotheses would be H0 mu 1/4 28 mpg H1 mu 6 1/4 28 mpg. You will remember that the reference value of 28 mpg was inside the 95% confidence interval about the mean for your data, so we would accept H0 for the Chevy Impala that the car does get 28 mpg. Objective: to state the result when you accept H0. Result: since the reference value of 28 mpg is inside the confidence interval, we accept the null hypothesis, H0. Let's try our 3 rules now. Objective: to write the conclusion when you accept H0. Rule number 1. Since the reference value was inside the confidence interval, we cannot use the words significantly in the conclusion. This is a basic rule we are using in this chapter for every problem. Rule number 2. The key terms in the conclusion would be Chevy Impala, reference value of 28 mpg. Rule number 3. The Chevy Impala did get 28 mpg. The process of writing the conclusion when you accept H0 is relatively straightforward since you put into words what you said when you wrote the null hypothesis. However, the process of stating the conclusion when you reject H0 and accept H1 is more difficult. So let's practice writing that type of conclusion with 3 practice case examples.
For writing the result of these your hypothesis testing for null hypothesis and for research hypothesis. Study these cases carefully. Look at this result. Extremely dissatisfied, and say one is extremely satisfied. The hypothesis for this item would be null hypothesis mu equal to 4, research hypothesis not equal to 4. So if you are interested further in null hypothesis and research hypothesis, kindly write to me. I will give you the link for this course material that we are using here for making this course. Thank you for watching. Thank you guys, and don't forget to share and subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.